Good afternoon and welcome to a special episode of عنان podcast, shot here live at Mohammed bin Salman City during the Miss Global Forum 2024. I'm very happy to introduce my guest for today, Mr. Alexander Olsen, who is an entrepreneur and a sustainability advocate, best known as the co-founder and CEO of Babylon Microfarms. We'll spend some time getting to know him, getting to know about his business, and hopefully inspiring you guys with his story. Hi, Alexander.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. Is it your first time in the kingdom?
It is, yeah, I've loved it so far.
How long have you been here?
About 48 hours.
48 hours.
So I haven't seen that much, but
okay. So I noticed the poppy pin on your jacket.
Yeah, so this is a little thing for remembrance in the UK. It's poppies are worn as part of remembering World War One.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you keep it with you?
It's just for this sort of time of year. So November 11th is the main day, and I actually just happened to have it on my jacket and didn't take it off.
Okay. I it drew my attention. So it's really great to have you here and welcome to the kingdom. Can you tell us, for those that don't know, Babylon Microfarms, can you tell us a little bit about that? So we can kick off the conversation from there.
Yeah, so at Babylon, our mission is to make hydroponic agriculture accessible to anyone. And so hydroponics is a method of growing plants in water instead of soil. So it's very resource efficient. It allows you to grow crops all year round using much less water, no pesticides or chemicals. And so I was introduced to this concept back in 2016. And we were originally looking at humanitarian applications and kind of conceptualizing how small could a farm be to feed someone or sustain a family. And so from that project, I was like, well, these micro farms, this is feasible. And why wouldn't we try to build that? And if we incorporate the latest technology and some of the best industrial design, maybe we could make a product that really could elevate the concept of urban farming and make it more accessible. So with that, we now are one of the leading manufacturers of modular vertical farming systems.
Modular?
Yes, yeah. So they it's a little bit like a double door fridge. If you can visualize that, it's about the same size. So we build these turnkey automated greenhouses. We manufacture them, and so they're an appliance that can allow people to grow up to 50 different varieties of.
So you can input them in any household.
We will eventually get to households. All of our work today is B2B, primarily in hospitality and education. So we'll install the farms in a cafeteria, and the chefs can grow fresh ingredients on site, so they have their own supply all year round.
So that's very amazing, actually. I know about hydroponics through my father-in-law, actually. Yep. He has his own greenhouse, has dabbled with hydroponics in the past and is now expanding with his greenhouse back in the Eastern province in Saudi. And honestly, the produce is incredible. How accessible, though? You mentioned that accessibility is your main objective for this. How accessible, though, is it for in terms of the materials that you would need to actually get? I understand there's like pH levels. There's certain technical things that you would require to run.
Yeah, so I think the best way to explain that would be to think about how it is the status quo today and certainly how it was 8 years ago when we started. So if you want to build a hydroponic farm, you have to add nutrients to the water. You have to run essentially this little science experiment. And so to grow a healthy plant, you need to balance the pH. You need to add nutrients. You actually need to control the oxidization of the water, the climate, the amount of light, all of these different variables. And when we were building farms ourselves, we saw that is, it's a fun science experiment if you're into it. But for most people, it's a real barrier to entry, and people don't have time. They don't want to learn how to do this, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong. And if you have unhealthy crops, that's not very satisfying. And so what we've set out to do is build kind of an integrated system that can automate all of those steps.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's not dissimilar to some of the automation you'd see in a commercial greenhouse. We just miniaturized it and made it at a much lower cost. And the end result is a system that is pretty much turnkey for the user. So we send little pre-seeded pods to the customer. They scan them into the farm, and then the farm registers what type of crop that is, gives it all the nutrients and everything it needs, and then alerts them when it's ready. So anyone can do it. And we like to say all of the people using our farms were not farmers beforehand. And yet we've turned them into farmers.
I love that. So how did that thought originate? Where did it come from? How did you end up here?
So the original insight's still the same, was just like, okay, so hydroponics is needed in the context of a changing climate. Food insecurity, food deserts are a big thing in the US. This is a tool.
What is food desert?
So food desert is about access to fresh produce. So in a lot of communities around the US, particularly kind of marginalized communities, they may have food, but it's fast food and it's not
Okay.
healthy, nutritious food.
Processed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so food deserts, like how close are you to actually some fresh food and real nutritious food? And then you have literal deserts out here where
Yeah.
maybe it's harder to grow crops.
Yes.
And so we see hydroponics as one of the many solutions that's going to help transform agriculture in the future. And our goal was just to build small modular farms. And we believe that that brings farming closer to the consumer. It captures a lot of the soft benefits around teaching people to grow their own food. And ultimately, it's a different take. There are a lot of people investing in big commercial greenhouses, commercial vertical farms, and I think they have a great place in the world. But we were like, okay, they're making big farms. Why wouldn't you make small farms?
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people who could benefit from that.
And right now you said it's mainly to hospitals and
Yeah, so
schools,
it's about 50% of our business is in schools, a third is in healthcare and senior living, and then the rest
where's
is
your primary audience?
so as in we sell to chefs, right? So the main thing is whether they have a food service offering.
Okay.
Yeah, so our main go-to-market is with companies like Aramark, Sodexo. These are contract food service
In the
companies.
US?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
and some internationally,
Nice.
hopefully out here soon enough. But yeah, we're basically working with them, and they can bring the farms into the location. They'll grow fresh ingredients that they use, but they'll also develop programs with it. So in schools, it's very effective because not only can they eat the product, but they can actually teach the kids about STEM education and different subjects from the farm.
Oh, I like that. That's very interesting. How did you personally get into farming? If you could take us a little bit
So I actually grew
through
up
your
around
journey.
farming in the UK, and I have to say I didn't want anything to do with
Yeah.
farming. This was not my goal, but I was very interested in startups and technology, and then I learned about this world of indoor farming and hydroponics, and I was hooked on it. And I sort of went down the rabbit hole and followed my passion. And it was a time in life where I was doing investment banking internships, and I was like trying to figure out what to do. This is during college.
Okay.
And
So this is which year? Last year of college?
you know, my third year of college. So I was a
Okay.
4-year degree, and yeah, so the university I attended had sort of pitch competitions and an incubator, and I sort of connected the dots. Like, well, if I have this idea, why wouldn't I just try? And I met a very talented co-founder, Graham Smith, who's kind of been along for the journey with me, and yeah, we just started connecting the dots. And so we had a year during my last year of college to really try and get customers and launch the product. And they look very different to what we do today, but
Yeah.
it was really just a question of getting started. And once we had a little bit of proof, I was like, okay, I really want to have a go at doing this full time. And here
So
we
you weren't, so initially it wasn't full time.
No, well, I was a student. So,
You were a student.
at that time, I was looking at the risk of it, and I was like, well, there is no risk. I know I'm going to graduate, and if I can start this company, maybe something good will happen. And here we are 8.5 years later. So,
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you never went down the corporate path.
nope.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And it's I was speaking to Steve Bartlett yesterday, and he was mentioning that you need to go all in, basically
Yeah.
with the passion that you have, especially at a time, as you said, you had nothing to lose, right? So
Well, I
you did
put
that.
every dollar I had
Yeah.
at the time into it, and I didn't even have a visa to stay in the US, but I was
Oh,
like,
so this was in the U.S.
yeah. So I was attending college over there, and
Where?
University of Virginia, and yeah, I was like, okay, let's do it, and went all in, and here we are.
Oh, that's incredible. What challenges did you face throughout the journey? It can't
Um,
have been smooth sailing.
no, it's still not.
It's still not.
I think the nature of hardware, like we actually run a very complicated product and service. So you have the hardware device that we have to manufacture. We have the Internet of Things control system. So you have electronics, firmware, and then you have a software that we use, and then you have an app for the customer.
Okay.
And then you have the
So
consumables,
it's
like
the integration of all.
yeah, so all those things have to work in harmony, and just from supply chain to manufacturing, it has been a very long road, and it's tough. And I think we're currently looking at how do we scale to kind of a next level, and a lot of that comes down to supply chain. And I think for me, my expectations around just how quickly things happen were much higher than the reality. And in
Boom,
yeah,
there are the fridges.
yeah, right. So it's taken us 8.5 years, and it feels like we're really just getting started. And I think that is exciting, but also it can be pretty daunting. Certainly with hardware, it's like every time we're like, okay, we get a bunch of customer feedback. With software, you can act on that in days and
Yeah.
weeks. And hardware, like, okay, this will be in the next iteration a year from now, and that drives me mad at times.
How do you stay motivated through something like that?
I think there's a lot of like building routines. I wasn't very good at that at the beginning, but I was always like pro working hard, but I wasn't working smart. And I think for me, changing the definition of work to include health and reading and like all of these kind of things that help you be better in your job has really started to add up. So that's been, just a discipline, and I like sticking to my routine. And even when I'm traveling, I try, and
Yeah.
I have just trying to keep going. And it's a momentum game. I always say to people that I meet a lot of people who are starting companies and they applied for one thing or they spoke to one investor. I'm like, why? I apply for 10 things at any one time. And
That persistence.
and so like the fact that usually 9 out of the 10 don't come through, it doesn't affect me because it's just momentum. But not everyone thinks
So it's not about how you're feeling at a given moment. It's just about pushing through regardless of.
No one cares how you're feeling.
No.
You just have to show up every day.
Nice.
Regardless of exactly. Some days it's really tough, and even now there are ups and downs, whether it's customers, investors, all of the different stakeholders we're balancing, but you just show up every day, give it everything, and keep going.
Yeah. So a lot of youth, I think, sustainability is such a huge topic, right? Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's debating about it. But I think for youth, a lot of people don't know how to get started, how to take the first step towards solving the things that they're passionate about when it comes to sustainability. What would you say is are practical steps that someone can take when starting out?
So I have a few thoughts on this. And a lot of mistakes that we've lived. And I was on a panel yesterday kind of about this, and I had a controversial take, or at least the other panelists thought it was, that sustainability doesn't matter until you're profitable.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean you're not a sustainable business, but it's a mistake that we've lived. And I see a lot of companies doing this where the virtue signaling, and there's a whole industry around virtue signaling for sustainability.
What is that?
So like a B Corp certification or other logos and things that you can apply for. And don't get me wrong, they have value in certain applications, but I think when you're getting started, it's like, oh, well, that'll make me sustainable. And if I do these things.
Can you break that down for the audience a little bit? And
so I think
who
like,
gives these accreditations, or
so maybe it's just I think your business can be sustainable and should be if it's solving a problem that helps eliminate waste or improve efficiency, and help increase access to certain things.
Yeah.
So those are really important, and people should definitely pursue goals that help us be more sustainable.
Yes.
By eliminating waste or helping people use more sustainable technologies. But the ethos of being sustainable, I think often, and in the startup world, there's a lot of pressure to attain badges and pitch yourself as being more sustainable than you are. And even like triple.
It's not just startups. I think it's just generally in business now. Yeah. It's kind of like a buzzword to a certain extent.
Yeah, and I think we've gone through this, and basically the amount, when you're a small company, the amount of time and energy you have to just build the thing is hard enough. And I think it's so easy. And I did this a lot, where I spent, God, in hindsight, weeks of time researching B Corp, like looking at the logos because we thought investors would like it or something like that. And it just, in hindsight, it was a very misguided use of time. And I see it all the time with companies that are earlier stage who are like, well, if we get this badge or this thing, then that will help us with our image. And it's like, actually, you should be solving the problem and building sustainable. And once you're profitable, you can invest in all of those things, and you can help change your culture to be more sustainable. And there's sort of, I think it's just a sequence of events. Like being sustainable should be about the specific problem you're solving. And if you achieve that and get to profitability, you can then invest in all the other things.
Okay, so it's less about the labeling and more about the impact itself.
Yeah. And I think there's also one thing I am a big believer in is climate adaptation, as opposed to focusing on like net zero and greenhouse gas emission reduction. Those things are important, but I think that narrative of telling people what they can't have and why they have to change is different to, hey, the climate is changing. We've made a mess, but luckily a lot of solutions exist today to help us live sustainably and adapt to a changing world. And I think there's a much more positive story on that, which is about embracing innovation, embracing new solutions like micro farms, where it's like, well, why wouldn't you grow your own food on site? And that's a solution. But for us, we don't have a clear greenhouse gas emissions target, but
Okay.
intuitively growing your own food makes sense, and people have done that historically.
So it's not like you, okay. So it's a little bit, I'm trying to visualize how it works. Now, the product that you're creating is solving for growing your own food.
Yeah, so you grow.
However, is there any downfalls, or is there any challenges in terms of carbon emission and whatnot from the product itself that is solving the problem?
So yeah, for vertical farming as a whole, and us, we use a lot of electricity. It's an appliance, and we have a manufacturing supply chain that produces emissions.
Yeah.
And we've done some calculations that if you use renewable energy, then it does save some carbon. But really, it's about increasing access to fresh product, not transporting it thousands of miles, reducing food waste. These are all really important sustainability topics, but they're much harder to quantify. And that's where I get back to this sort of narrative around climate adaptation. It's like there are actually a lot of solutions that are going to help us be more efficient, help people be more self-sufficient, and whether that's growing food or producing your own energy locally. But if you actually look at the supply chain, all of the things that you need to produce carbon to do it.
Yeah.
So there are trade-offs in all of these things, and there are other industries where reducing greenhouse gas emissions is paramount, and there are solutions for that. But I think by focusing just on that one thing, you miss the benefits of a lot of these other solutions that are really about like adaptation and helping people live more prosperous lives and giving them access to
Which maybe is less quantifiable at a small scale, but when you look at it at a mass scale, then it will be something that you can potentially quantify.
Well, that was our hope. In a dream scenario, the buildings of the future, you'll have renewable energy produced by solar and other means on the roof, and you'll have a vertical farm in the basement growing all of your fresh ingredients.
Wouldn't that be great?
Right. And
the Jetsons kind of.
Well, exactly. And there are other solutions out there, but I think that's where it's really about self-sufficiency. And I think that is really at the core of what everyone wants, right? You want to be self-independent. You want to be able to produce food, energy, the things you need to live. And if we can help people do that, that's a really exciting future. And I think that's again the climate adaptation piece, which is exciting, and I think it's often overlooked.
No, I love that. It's a fresh perspective entirely. The narrative around carbon emission, around I like what you're bringing to the table, and it's entirely different. So thank you for that. And I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about your background, your parents, your household growing up. Do you think the way that you've been brought up has to do with the way that you are today?
That's a very loaded question because I have a complicated family.
Well, don't we all?
My parents are not together. My dad farms in Norfolk in the UK. My mom is in London. I'd say it was a strained relationship, and absolutely has a huge impact on what I do today. I think growing up where things weren't easy definitely shapes your perspective and desires to do more and achieve more. And I was very lucky to move to the US, where I think there is a sort of culture around entrepreneurialism, and if you have ambitions and ideas, why wouldn't you just try them? And I think in the UK that's not so much the case. I think that's changing, but having had that break from my family and having the independence in the US, and then the culture that allowed me to embrace these ideas has been amazing for me, and it's helped really kind of set me on a path to hopefully build Babylon to a scale, and hopefully build other companies after that.
Hopefully. Best of luck on that. I look forward
to
seeing.
Definitely.
There we go.
There's a few more.
When we get there, that's yes, for sure. So, like you mentioned, in terms of the U.S. supporting entrepreneurs, Saudi is investing heavily in youth entrepreneurship and innovation. What advice would you give to young people here who are looking to start impactful ventures, specifically when it comes to sustainability?
Well, I'd start just by in my 48 hours here, and especially being in this forum, clearly there's an energy here. And I heard that His Excellency talk yesterday about the Saudi dream. You know, they talk about the China miracle, and he was saying this is the Saudi miracle. And I think that's amazing just to be around a culture. I look at the amount of cranes outside,
Yeah.
like you guys are building a lot of stuff.
We're building a whole new world.
So if I was a young person in Saudi, I'd be very inspired by that. And I think to be in an atmosphere where the resources and the ecosystems being built so that people can connect the dots and build their own businesses is amazing. And you know, as far as sustainability goes, I think that's our future. One way or another, we need to create a more self-sustaining civilization broadly, and at the local level, a lot of these solutions exist today, whether that's indoor farming to grow your own food, solar to produce your own energy. I think they're focusing on what humans need and have always needed is a great place to start for anyone who can start a business. And then the other thing is really, if you're looking at sustainability, eliminate waste. How do you increase efficiency? How do you help people live more self-sufficiently? And if you aim at those things, it's not easy, but at least you're going for something that people really need.
So what reward does it give you beyond having the product itself? Like you work with providing for hospitals, for education, for B2B you mentioned, but also do you see any of the impact that this has on the communities at a grassroots level?
Yeah, as in we do, as in we measure. Actually, I'm going to forget off the top of my head, but I think it's millions of pounds of produce a year we're growing now. So it adds up, and you know, these are all little farms. We have about 300 operating locations today, and they all add up. And it's like, you know, we often get people say, "Oh, that's too small to grow enough food." I'm like, yeah, well, combined, it adds up. And I think we see it. You know, we've had patients in a hospital say that this gives them something to live for. Because they had their garden and they've watched it grow.
That's
like
so
there are things like that where I was like, wow, that is you could never have expected that. And then similarly in schools, we see this where like kids line up for the salad bars, and that's not normal.
for the salad bars.
Yeah, because there's been
Do they get actively invested in the salad bars?
It depends on the food safety regulation, but we yeah, so like sometimes the chefs will harvest from the farm and like make a salad for them, and then kids line up for salad bars. Like, okay, that I don't know, it depends how you quantify your impact. It may not be greenhouse gas emissions, but to me that's clearly shaping people's attitudes and helping them eat more healthy food, which is you know, that's what we're all about.
Absolutely, I love that. So as someone who's been recognized by Forbes, 30 under 30, correct?
Yes.
How do you view the role of young people in transforming industry like agriculture?
Well, agriculture is a tough one, right? Because there's no one size fits all solution, but I do think ultimately everyone needs to eat, so it's a great industry.
That's true.
And I also think it's a very accessible industry, especially in countries around the world. In the US, right, you have big industrial farming, but around the world, there's a lot of opportunity to support farmers, help them embrace regenerative practices, use the latest technologies. And so I think there's, and hopefully build a more resilient supply chain and a more local supply chain. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And, for young people, I think it's beyond agriculture. Entrepreneurship's the way of the future. And I said yesterday that one of the beauties of this generation is that we are software native. And so a lot of these tools that are intimidating to our parents,
even to millennials sometimes.
Yeah. So, and I would say I'm nowhere near software native as some of my friends and people, some of the young people I met here. But if you're able to use those tools, the amount you can get done with just a laptop to actually build a website, take payments, start a company, like you could do that in a few clicks. Like it's really, the barrier to entry is so low. And that's amazing. And obviously there's more to it than that, but the barrier to entry is lower and lower. And I think the ability to educate yourself on any of these topics, I taught myself hydroponic farming online, read a few textbooks, and built a few prototypes. That was all like self-driven, and that's, anyone can do that. That was just using the tools that are out there today. And I think for the young generation who are native to these tools, I'm so excited to see how people connect the dots and the things that they're able to achieve with just a few resources.
What do you think are and maybe that's an introspective question as well for you to think, if you possess those, what do you think are the skills that you would require to continue down a path such as yours?
So I don't think there's any one size fits all entrepreneur. I think some people are better connecting the dots. I think there's self-awareness to know what you're good at and then the ability to find people to help you with what you're not good at is really the simplest thing people can do. And I've met a lot of people who are like, well, I'm not good at fundraising, I'm not good at public speaking, I'm not, but they're like the best programmer or the best. I'm like, well, you've got a skill I don't have. You're further ahead than you realize. And I think it's really just helping people understand where their strengths and weaknesses are, and making sure they know to put them in a position where they're focusing on their strengths, and then identify what they're not good at to find people. Because I think wherever you are around the world, I moved to the US and didn't know anyone, and everyone wants to help. I think just generally people want to help. And when it comes to starting businesses and hopefully solving a problem and helping build something, everyone loves that. Like, I don't think there's anyone out there who's going to say like, no, I won't help you. I mean, you may have to be a bit persistent, but if you come to them saying like, this is what I'm good at, this is what I want to do,
so it's building like that community.
It's definitely, and relationships are very important. I think we've been very lucky, whether it's advisors or people who became investors, investing in them and saying like, hey, like, this is what I'm good at, this is what I want to do, but I have these problems, can you help me? And sometimes they can't, but when they can, and then they want to help you, and you build that relationship, those hopefully will stay with you a lifetime. And certainly that's something I believe is that, once Babylon is a foundation, and hopefully I'm going to go and build other things, but it's probably going to be with many of the same people that helped me build Babylon. And that's exciting to me.
That's absolutely incredible. I love the name, by the way.
Thank you.
Because you're building Babylon.
As you say, it's out here.
No, that's
Hanging Gardens of Babylon, for those who don't know, one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world.
Yes. So, no, thank you so much for that. Where do you envision the future of Babylon going, and how do you see yourself navigating that future?
So for Babylon specifically, I think we are on track to be the defining brand in this new category of kind of on-site farming. So we've got the industry-leading products, we're growing our distribution, and now it's really just a question of educating customers and getting them to the point where the adoption helps us kind of scale beyond where we are today. So, in the next few years, we hope to have thousands of operating locations, and that's an exciting prospect.
That's both within the US and
yes,
international.
Yeah. Well, I said yesterday, we're looking for partners to launch in this region. So if anyone's out there, we'd love to talk to you. But for me personally, I want to build kind of a portfolio of different climate technology companies. I think my passion is in the company building side, and hopefully soon enough, I'll be launching other companies that help scale some of the technologies that exist today. Because from what I've seen, actually a lot of the technologies we need to live a more self-sufficient and build a sustainable future, they all exist today. It's really a question of finding the right people to scale them up. And that's, there's a lot of things that go into that, but I'm very optimistic about the future, and even with climate change and some of these other things that are happening, all of the solutions exist today. We just need to find the right people to scale them up, and hopefully with Babylon and some other companies in the future, that I can play a role in that.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was an absolute pleasure getting to know you, getting to know Babylon and the mission that you guys are on. Best of luck to you, and I look forward to hearing about where you get to in the near future.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.